And welcome to another very special episode of Short Pause Presents. Brent and I are back with another movie spoiler cast. And once again, you guys are probably thinking, what the hell, man? I thought this was a video game website. But you know us. We like to venture off the beaten path every now and then. Of course, Star Wars The Last Jedi just came out last night as we're recording this. Brent and I have both seen it. There's a lot to discuss. So we decided, in the tradition of our Force Awakens spoiler cast and our It spoiler cast, we need to get out here and talk about The Last Jedi for a little bit.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of stuff to work through. So, Brent, how are you this fine evening?
I'm good, man. I'm doing real good. I was able to get out after work and check out a 10:35 showing of The Last Jedi.
10:35, you rebel.
Yeah, it was when I kept checking my watch every time the next trailer came up. I'm like, man. Okay, now it's 11 o'clock. I know this is a 2.5-hour joint, so let's get the party started for us old folks. But no, it was actually really good. It was one of the more livelier audiences I've been a part of here in Saginaw, Michigan. I mean, the cosplay was in full effect. We had people cheering as soon as the Lucasfilm logo popped up. So it was a rowdy crowd. It was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, if you've never been to a Star Wars premiere, I've been to several of them now. Obviously, I've saw The Force Awakens, saw The Last Jedi, but saw the prequel movies when they originally came out. Was at the movie theater when the original trilogy got re-released to the theater. So I've been through several of these, and it's always a unique environment to be in when you go and see a Star Wars premiere. Like, you're there with the hardcore Star Wars fans. Like you said, people are cheering when the Lucasfilms thing comes up. The crawl gets up there. There's a palpable energy in the audience. There's cheering when certain scenes happen. There's a round of applause at the end of the movie. So this is all the kind of stuff that happens when you're involved in that kind of environment. It's a cool environment to be in. As a big Star Wars fan myself, it's always exciting to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. I don't show up dressed as Chewie or anything, but I partake in the festivities.
Chewie's actually the easiest one for me. I literally just take my shirt off and good to go.
Yeah, that's a good point. You built-in Chewie cosplay. That's a feature not many of us can claim.
Yeah,
so, congratulations.
I'm proud of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife loves it.
Oh, absolutely.
So Brent, we are going to get down to brass tacks here. We are going to talk about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And I don't know, man. I just like doing these for big time movies that come out. Like sitting down, having some discussions about this stuff. So if I were a betting man, I would bet that you'll see some more of these from Short Pause in the future, especially next year. There's a lot of good flicks coming out.
A lot of good flicks.
There's a lot of stuff I'm going to want to talk about.
Yeah, I like doing these. I like doing the trailers, reaction trailers, trailer reaction videos. Those are always really fun to do as well. So, we're predominantly a gaming website, but we love our movies. We love our whether it's sci-fi, horror, action, comedy. We're always at the theater, and we always like checking out the newest movies. And it's always nice to be able to talk to our listeners, our viewers, and whatnot about things outside of gaming. So they learn a little bit more about us, and we learn a little bit more about them outside of their gaming habits.
Yeah, and obviously to talk about Star Wars, not a stretch with the gaming community.
Not at all.
This is like peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, these things go together very well. So we're gonna talk about The Last Jedi here. Obviously, this is a spoiler cast. If you have not watched The Last Jedi, we are gonna talk about all of the twists and turns and everything that happens in this film. Mm-hmm. If you have not seen this film, turn this video off right now. Mm-hmm. Do not watch this video. We are going to get into everything, all the nitty-gritty details. No stone left unturned, Brent. Mm-hmm. So this is your fair warning. And also, we've just seen The Last Jedi. We're a day removed from seeing The Last Jedi. There's a lot to process in this film. So we're going to talk our way through this movie tonight. Our feelings may change on this. Next time we see this movie, things can evolve. But as we stand here right now, a day after we've seen The Last Jedi, these are kind of our raw, unrehearsed thoughts in regards to the film. So to get things started, Brent, I just kind of want to get a general idea of the movie out there in terms of what we thought of it. So I'll get us started here. And I really like The Last Jedi. Really, really enjoyed it. As a longtime Star Wars fan, there's a lot of stuff in here that really speaks to me. There's some big time twists and turns. There's some interesting things that we learn about characters, interesting things we learn about the Force in this movie that I think longtime fans are really gonna dig. So just from a global perspective, I walked out of the theater excited about The Last Jedi, like excited about Star Wars again, much like I was with The Force Awakens. I loved The Force Awakens. I love the kind of direction that they were moving in with this new trilogy, and The Last Jedi kind of picked up on that and ran with it. The Last Jedi is a much darker film than The Force Awakens. It's really dark. It's probably the darkest Star Wars film we've ever had. When it all comes down to it, Empire is often lauded for its kind of dark tone, but this is darker even than Empire. So, that said, though, there are many moments of levity, many moments of gravity. This is probably one of the funniest Star Wars movies that they've ever made. This is one of the only Star Wars films where I can remember just multiple times the audience just laughing out loud at scenes in the movie. So there's a lot of that in The Last Jedi. So kudos to Rian Johnson for keeping that kind of lighthearted Star Wars feel amidst all the darkness that this movie harnesses. Also, it was I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but it was almost like this bitter sadness watching this film, watching Carrie Fisher on screen as Leia. Like every time she's on the screen, it's just like, man, she's just no longer here with us. And that was tough to watch that kind of play out, because she does play a larger role in the Last Jedi than she did in The Force Awakens. Thought she was great in this movie, so it was really sad to see that all play out. See the in memoriam message at the end of the film. To see how that kind of play out, there's this kind of overwhelming sadness to go along with the movie as well. But it's a testament to the picture that through all that, cutting through all that, an enjoyable movie emerged. So, just from like I said, just from a general perspective, I like the film, man.
Yeah, and like I said, it took me a while today to really kind of like think things over and whatnot, and this is a much different Star Wars movie that I'm accustomed to. Like you said, there's some darker themes here. We actually see some characters who aren't the characters that we remember them by from the original trilogy. And, it definitely was just kind of an experience that I wasn't expecting. But in terms of like craftsmanship, I mean, obviously Rian Johnson has this down to a T. He knows what he's doing, and I can now see why Disney entrusted him with a whole new trilogy that he's going to work on in the future. So with him, you see the product on the screen. You see that he has a firm grasp on the Star Wars franchise. He has a firm grasp on what people expect to see on the big screen. But there was just, like I said, it just took a lot of processing, a lot of time to think about it. And like you said, man, I have to go see this again. I'll be seeing this again next weekend when my brother-in-law and my father-in-law are in town. So that's what we typically do on Christmas Eve. We'll go out to see the latest Star Wars movie. So I'll get a chance to kind of sit back now that I know what happens throughout the movie and kind of pick apart the little things I might have missed that would help kind of, maybe add a new perspective to stuff.
Yeah, and Like I mentioned earlier, like you just alluded to there, there's a lot to process with this film, man. So it's going to take a few watches and to kind of get behind it. And this is honestly probably going to be a polarizing movie with Star Wars fans. There's going to be some things that are going to be tough to swallow, or things that they might not agree with that play out over the course of the film. And like you said, the craftsmanship in the movie is excellent, and I think that's where we see a lot of the critical response from. The critical response to The Last Jedi has been exceptional. But now there's going to be this other interesting layer with the fan response. So how are fans going to take to this movie? And, a lot of them that I've seen are divided in how they feel about The Last Jedi as we stand here today. And that's understandable. So what I was thinking we would do is just kind of dive into some of the different characters and their arcs in the film and just kind of talk our way through theirs. And I'm going to start with Rey, who is I don't think there's any question. This is her story when it's all said and done. This trilogy of films, the focus is primarily on her. So let's talk a little bit about what we saw from Rey in this film. So we see her, obviously, at the end of The Force Awakens, she was meeting with Luke on the mountain and the secret Jedi island. So we pick up this movie here with her handing Luke the lightsaber in a really one of the movie's first really funny moments where he takes the lightsaber from her, just throws it off the cliff. So there was much laughter in the theater at that. So that was really funny, and it kind of set the tone for the rest of the movie. So I had a feeling Luke was going to be like this old curmudgeon Jedi, and I kind of liked him in that role. But so we see Rey with Luke. We see lots of developments between her and Kylo Ren. We see some hints towards her heritage. We may or may not have the answer to that right now as we sit here today. We see kind of her big breakout moment at the end of the film when she basically saves the rebellion. We see her just piloting the Falcon as a badass. We see her in the same gun chamber that we saw Luke in once upon a time in the Millennium Falcon, taking out TIE fighters and stuff. So lots of really strong moments for Rey. Lots of stuff to discuss. Brent, let me get your thoughts, man. Where do you want to start with Rey? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the thing I like about Rey in this one is you can really sense that she's trying to figure out who she is and what her place is in all of this. And you can tell she's conflicted about a lot of things. She's confused. She seeks out Luke, not only to bring Luke in to kind of help the Resistance and fight back the First Order, but also that maybe he can help her figure out who she really is and what she's supposed to do with these powers that she now realizes that she has. So I really like that part of it, because obviously with The Force Awakens, she was just like, she was like Luke in the first one. She's just kind of alone on a planet, and she's just, going about her business. And next thing you know, she's thrust into this huge story and this huge adventure. Now she's trying to figure out, why am I doing this stuff? What is my purpose here? And I think they do a really good job, and I think she did a really good job in her performance of conveying that confusion, that 1 minute she feels this way, one moment she feels this way. I mean, I thought she did a really good job. I liked how they took her character this time around.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of really excellent performances in The Last Jedi, and Daisy Ridley's was probably the best out of all of them. I mean, she's exceptional in this role. She brings this, she's diminutive in stature, but she brings this presence and this kind of this tenacity and this toughness to the character, much in the way Carrie Fisher did to Leia back in the original films. She has that same kind of spunk and tenacity with Rey. So I love seeing that in here. There's she has to span the gamut of emotions in this movie. From there's lots of emotional scenes with Rey. So so I thought her performance was exceptional. So let's talk a little bit about what we learned about her heritage in the movie here, or what we didn't learn. So just to recap here. So there's like you mentioned, in The Force Awakens, and we find out that the subtitle of that film is basically about Rey. Like, the Force has awakened in her. She's discovered that she has this ability now that she's got to kind of wrap her head around, and we see her fighting with that, like you said, in The Last Jedi. And this is not simply like Rey is a warrior for the light, so to speak, for the light side of the Force. She's grappling with the power that she has within her, and there are elements of the dark side that are pulling at her as well. So this is not as black and white as just, hey, I'm a good guy, I'm gonna save the universe. There's other things at play here. And one of the things that calls to her as the Force is awakening is this kind of cave that's on this island. So we find out Luke's on this deserted, or this kind of exiled Jedi island that's been there since the dawn of time, and it houses the sacred Jedi texts and all this kind of stuff. And he's the only one who knows where it is. Yada yada yada. But obviously they found the map, and we're able to locate him. But so Rey gets down in this cave, and she I don't know if I don't really know how to explain this, but she goes down into this cave, and she kind of gets in tune with the Force, and she can almost travel through time.
Right. So
she sees the past and the future, like kind of all at once. And in this moment, there's what is building to what we believe is going to be a reveal of who her parents are. But once the shadow kind of fades away and we see the person that's being revealed, it's Rey. So when I first saw that, I was thinking, I wonder if Rey doesn't have any parents. Like, I wonder if she was created out of like midi-chlorians or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Like, she was actually a product of the Force. That was my first thought when I saw that, and I was like, okay, maybe this is what we're getting at. But we didn't get any answers there. Later in the film, Kylo Ren is kind of holding this carrot over her head for much of the film. Like, do you want to know who your parents are? Do you want to know who your heritage is? And eventually, he says, he confronts her about it, and he how did he say it? He was, tell me who your parents are. You know it. You feel it inside you.
Mm-hmm.
And she says they're nobody. And he says, right, they're basically junk traders from Jakku who sold her for booze money or whatever.
Right.
And
right.
and that was that. So, couple questions here, Brent. A, do you believe Kylo Ren? Do you believe this explanation that her parents are just nobody? And B, if not, like where do we go from here?
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to think about, because obviously that was a big part of like the Force Awakens. One of the big questions: who are her parents? Where does she come from? And if we think about it, she goes down into that cave, and like you said, she's looking into this almost like this reflective mirror type of thing, and you see somebody approaching, and again, it's her. Once it clears, and you're like, okay, that doesn't answer any of my questions. I'm still confused, and so like Kylo Ren tells her, tells her, your parents are nobody. They're nobody. And at that point, first you're thinking, okay, he's lying. He's got to be lying. And so immediately, no, I didn't buy it at first. But then you kind of look around at some of the other things that people have been saying to Rey. For example, Luke basically tells, as she's trying to convince Luke to help, Luke tells her that, look, the Force isn't just meant for Jedi. It's not just, it doesn't just spawn inside of Jedis who have a long history of Jedis. I mean, the Force is around everybody, and it's not just Jedis who get to feel. So you're like, so that you take that and you're like, okay, maybe she's not from Jedi stock or whatever. And then at the end of the movie, and again, I don't mean to jump ahead, but this kind of just, I feel like this is where we're going with this is, at the end of the movie, it goes back to the planet where the casino is, where Rose and Finn were carrying out their mission, trying to find the master code breaker or whatever.
Yeah, master code breaker.
Master code breaker. And there is like this stable with these kids that are slaves that are like, helping around the stable, and they're often like beaten by the masters of these pets or that run this casino or whatever it is. Yeah. And we see one of these kids walk outside, and he's like in this I don't know what this hangar type of place, and he just reaches over and wills a broom over to him using the Force. Now, if you look at that, you're just like, okay, here's a kid out in the middle of nowhere, just here, and he has the Force. Mm-hmm. And that, taking all that stuff into consideration, maybe that's what it is. Maybe Rey is nobody. Her parents are nobody. Maybe her parents, because I mean, if you see all these different people, even you got Luke saying, look, you don't have to be a Jedi to be one with the Force. And then you've got this random kid, this small kid who has like maybe 2 scenes in the movie. He has the Force, and again, you get him just looking off into space, wondering what's next for him, so to speak. Yeah. So you take those things into consideration, and honestly, yes, I think Kylo Ren was being honest with her, because you don't have to be a Jedi, you don't have to have a certain heritage to use the Force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been thinking about it as well, and for all of Ren's faults and his his evil ways, so to speak, he's doesn't come off as a liar.
No,
like that's not his MO. He's not really out there. Even his story about Luke, and we'll get to that in a little bit. That's a big moment in the film. He wasn't really lying when he told his side of the story about that. So he doesn't strike me as the type of character who would just say a bold-faced lie to Rey. Also, when we think back to when we've seen this kind of power before or something similar to this, we think of Anakin Skywalker, and we think of who his parents were and where he came from. He was on the I don't remember the name of the planet right now. He was on the planet with Watto, with the pod racers. His mother was a slave for Watto. They come from a poor background. His mother wasn't any master of the Force or anything like that. So his origins were he didn't come from anything special. Mm-hmm. So that's why, and also when Ren confronts Rey about this finally, and he kind of goads her into talking about this, she is the first one to speak on this. So he's like, tell me, you feel it. You feel who your parents are. Who are they? She's the one that tells him nobody. And he agrees with her, and then, kind of embellishes it a little bit with the booze money and that kind of stuff. Also, if I think back, if I remember correctly, didn't Rian Johnson say that part of this film is we were gonna find out where Rey came from?
Oh yeah.
And he kind of definitively say like the answer was going to be here.
He said the answers will be in this movie.
Yeah. So if we take all that into consideration, don't we have to take what Ren and Rey are talking about at face value here?
I think so, and I think that's kind of one of the hard things for me about accepting this movie, because we were all expecting like, oh, is she Obi-Wan's granddaughter or something along those lines? Because that's what we expect from the Star Wars movies. That's what we saw in the original trilogies. Luke, oh my God, his father is Vader. Now you know where he gets his from, and it's just kind of like, no, you don't. It doesn't have to be from anything special. You can just be one with the Force, and that's it. And I think that was one of the harder things for me to accept, because I'm so used to what we saw in the original trilogy, and it's just kind of a different approach, but it's an interesting one, and I'm glad Rian Johnson actually explored that, because it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and that's one of the themes of Rian Johnson, and probably what we're going to see for the remainder of this trilogy here. But as odd as this is going to sound in a in a movie about flying spaceships and laser swords and aliens and the Force and all this kind of stuff, but this is a much more grounded take on Star Wars than what we've seen in the past. Mm-hmm. With Lucas, it's very black and white. These are the good guys. These are the bad guys. The good guys have these Force powers. The bad guys have these Force powers. The good guys are going to try to beat the bad guys. That's Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But now, in this new era, with things like, and we saw a lot of this in like Rogue One. We saw this in The Force Awakens as well. But there's these shades of gray to these characters in this modern Star Wars trilogy. So it's not just this guy's all white, he's all a good guy. This guy's all dark side. This guy's a bad guy. It's not like that here. It's not black and white. Mm-hmm. There are many shades of gray in The Last Jedi, and that's where Benicio del Toro's character comes into this whole kind of theme as well. So this is a theme that runs through The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. So taking that into account, this kind of more grounded take, this more realistic take on the characters, this more human take on the characters, I think it makes sense for Rian Johnson and for this vision of Star Wars for them to just simply be like, look, there's no grand fantasy behind who Rey is. She's simply somebody who's in touch with the Force, and that's just what it is. She doesn't come from anybody special. So I think it just kind of fits in with the vibe that they're going for this new trilogy.
Mm-hmm. And it keeps people guessing too. I think that's something that, with the exception of finding out that Vader was Luke's father, you could kind of predict the things that were going to happen in the original trilogy. You could kind of see where things were going. Mm-hmm. I think if you go this route, like you said, where there's a gray area, it makes it a little bit harder to read people, what their intent is. I still don't know what the hell the intent of Kylo Ren is in this movie. I saw 3 different outcomes throughout this movie. I'm like, okay, is he not a good guy? Oh, is he starting to see the light? Does he want to be buddies with nope, he just wants to take over the world. Okay, or take over the galaxy. That's fine. But it makes it a little bit harder to read people. And that's cool for the audience, in my opinion. I think that's a good thing for the audience, because it keeps you guessing, it keeps you interested, it keeps you wanting more, as opposed to like, okay, this person's this person, I bet you this is what's going to happen, this is what happen, and then it happens, you're like, oh, it kind of takes away from it. So I think that leaves room for for plot twists and just more entertainment value for the viewers.
Yeah, so this is one of the first really big, like, controversial things that are going to be in this movie, is the reveal of Rey's heritage. Now, all that said, this doesn't mean that this is 100% the answer to her heritage. Like, we could watch Episode 9, and there could be, some grand plan that's been playing out that we don't know about yet. This could be a turn.
I'm sorry to cut you off, and that's the one thing that makes me wonder if Kylo Ren is holding something back, because the one thing that stands out about these two is that, yes, that kid at that stable was able to, will over a broom to him using the Force. But when you look at Luke Skywalker and the things he was saying about Ren back in the day when he was training him, I sensed something darker, like a raw power. Like this is a different level of the power of the Force. Mm-hmm. And he senses it in Rey as well. So, I mean, yeah, she comes from nobody, but you have these two people who have just this unbelievable amount of force in them, and it's more than what other people seem to have. I mean, even Luke Skywalker couldn't get his head around the how much Ren had during his training and how much Rey had coming from nowhere. Yeah. So that makes me wonder, maybe there is still something there that's connecting these two, because they have much more raw power than anyone else around them.
Yeah, and there's some kind of connection between them. You know,
Oh, hell yeah.
Snoke alluded to during the film that he was kind of bridging the connection between them. Do you believe him on that? Do you believe that he was involved in that, or do you believe there's something deeper?
You know, Snoke is just a strange character because in my mind, I thought Snoke was going to be like the ultimate
emperor.
he was
going to be the new emperor,
the main antagonist for the rest of the series, and obviously that's not the case. So I don't know. I want to say that he was like bragging about it, but just by Kylo Ren's his body language and the way he was acting before and prior, I almost think Kylo Ren was playing Snoke the whole time. But that's just the way I was looking at it.
Do you think now, like I mentioned, when I saw Rey look into that reflection and it came back herself, do you think there could be anything to my very out of this universe theory that Rey could have been just a creation of the Force, that she could be like a divine birth, for instance, like she was just sprouted from the Force. She was the one to bring balance to the Force, birthed by the Force itself.
Man, I tell you what, at this rate, I think anything is possible. And if that's the case, I mean, do you think Ren is from the same thing? Comes from the same type of thing?
Like could we have like dueling forces here? Like we have the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force.
Yep.
They exist all around the universe. Like could they both? But obviously Kylo is Han and Leia's son.
True. Yeah, so I kind of
we know that, but I don't know. It's a crazy thought, and it literally goes right in the face of everything we just said about this being a more grounded take on the Star Wars. Yeah. So it probably is not the case, but I don't know, just the way my crazy mind works. That's the first thing I thought of. And I was like, oh, Rey is her own parent. She comes from the Force, but maybe not. But let's we've been talking about some of this other stuff. Now we need to hit on this scene with Rey and Kylo and Snoke. In my mind, this is the most powerful scene in the movie, the scene in the throne room with Snoke and with Ren. And when Rey initially leaves Luke, after her training with him, she's like, she's building this connection with Ren. And she decides that for whatever reason, she thinks that she can turn him. She sees some light in him. They're building this really weird connection. And she's like, I'm going to succeed where you failed. I'm going to go get Kylo Ren. He is going to be the key to the rebellion, turning the tides on the First Order. So she flies just flies right into enemy territory, gets captured immediately upon boarding the ship, and then she's in Ren's clutches, and Ren takes her right to the throne room. And it's here that we see a very intense scene between Snoke and Rey and Kylo, and I'm on the edge of my seat watching this. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen here. Snoke has his red guard surrounding the room, which have a really cool design, and like you said, like he's in our eyes has been built up as kind of this new Palpatine. Like he's supposed to be the dark Sith Lord who's training Ren to be the next Vader and all this kind of stuff. So this is the kind of things we're thinking about in terms of Snoke, and this scene plays out. And, Snoke, he basically places Rey in front of Kylo and more or less is like, all right, you need to execute her now and complete your turn to the dark side. Complete your turn to be the heir apparent to Darth Vader. Like, this is the kind of stuff that we saw from Ren in the first movie. Like, we know he idolizes Vader and he looked up to Vader. And as this scene plays out, what he does is Snoke on his throne right next to him. He's holding Rey's, which was formerly Luke's lightsaber, sitting right next to him. And, Ren subtly manipulates the lightsaber, turns it on Snoke, and just cuts Snoke in half. And then from there, Rey and Ren just proceed to just eviscerate the Red Guard in just an incredible sequence of events. So, I'm just watching this, and I'm like, wow, what is going on here? Like, and I'll touch upon this later as we're talking here, but this is kind of like the climax of the movie here. So what's going through your head when you're watching this, dude? Like, what's going through your head when all this is transpiring? Were you kind of on the edge of your seat watching this?
I was. Yeah, it was a super intense scene. I was a little disappointed to see Snoke go out kind of like a bitch. I was just like, because he basically, I see how. I mean, I understand how Kylo did it, and I thought it was pretty clever. As he's doing what Snoke is reading his mind is doing. He's actually doing with, what he's going to do to Rey is the same thing he's preparing to do to Snoke. So he kind of masks that, and I dug that. But I was just like, man, this guy just went out like a punk, dude. That sucks.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, dude. So Snoke, like I said, we're building it up in our mind. Like, this is the next Palpatine. Like, this is the big boss presiding over everything. And this is the first time we've seen him in this movie. All we saw was his head in Force Awakens. We've never seen this dude. We don't know anything about him. He could have been 50 feet tall like he was in the Force Awakens. We have no idea. But that was just we found out that was just a projection of him. He's actually much more normal sized when it comes down to it. And we finally meet him in the throne room. He's this very imposing figure. Andy Serkis, great job with Snoke. Fantastic performance as him. So Snoke's really menacing. And yeah, for him to just go out like that, to just get cut in half by Ren, to me it's like, dude, if you're this big bad like Sith badass, like, you got to be able to sense something's going on, or you got to be like in tune with your environment here a little bit, right?
Right.
Like, doesn't this I mean, if you're like this supreme master or whatever the hell you were called, what was he called? The
supreme leader,
whatever. Yeah, Supreme Leader Snoke. You're the Supreme Leader. You're training Kylo Ren. You're this dark Sith Lord, reborn and all this kind of stuff. Like, you can't go out like that, right? It's just, that can't be how you go out. This is the first time we've seen you. You've got maybe 10 minutes of airtime in the Star Wars franchise, and you're a goner.
Yeah. And that makes me wonder more about Kylo Ren and just how much he was actually manipulating Snoke, like how much he was actually playing Snoke this whole time. Because like I said, Snoke's like, Snoke's sitting there just bragging, dude. I mean, he's like, yeah, I bridged you guys together. I've been playing you guys like puppets, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, and before that, he's just belittling Ren in a previous scene, belittling him and basically calling him a failure and whatnot. And then, this whole time, I can't help but wonder if Kylo Ren is just sitting there playing and manipulating Snoke, which makes me wonder just how powerful, just how dark is Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we see him take out the Red Guards with Rey, and then Rey's like ready to like team up and kind of go save the rebellion, and Ren's like, join me, like by my side, like on some old school Darth Vader kind of stuff. Yeah. Like, join me by my side and we'll rule the galaxy together.
Yeah, he's like let the Sith die. He's like, let the Jedi die. Let all these people just kill each other, and then we'll just kind of rise up and take over. We'll be in charge without anyone to oppose us. Yeah, it's just like, let everyone else die, and obviously Rey's not on board with that.
Yeah, he's like, all this stuff, Jedi, Sith, First Orders, rebellions. He's like, let's just put all this aside. Let them all kill each other and let them do their thing. And then we rise up and we rule the universe. We start a new order together as, these powerful sorcerers of the Force, so to speak. And obviously, like you said, Rey not buying that. So, while we're here, let's just talk about Kylo Ren. So, an extremely complex character now in the Star Wars mythos. Adam Driver, another incredible performance as Kylo Ren. Very, very, very talented actor. He was gave a great performance in The Force Awakens. He follows that up here in The Last Jedi with a really just marvelous take on Kylo Ren in this very, very conflicted figure. And as we stand here today, it's like, you don't know what to think of Ren. Like you said at the beginning of the film, he kind of early on in the film too, he smashes his mask.
That was after he'd just gotten belittled and berated by Snoke.
Yeah, so like you said, he went to see Snoke. He's talking through the mask. He's got that kind of distortion in his voice. Snoke's like, take that ridiculous thing off, man. It's basically like, who do you think you are, Darth Vader? Like take that off. Like you're not at that level yet. And then he smashes the mask, and I think there's a lot of symbolism in that in the beginning of the movie, like him smashing the mask and kind of like turning the next corner in his character arc. What did you think of specifically when you saw the mask get smashed? Like, what was going through your head?
I was wondering if that's the moment where he was like, I'm done with the First Order. Like, I'm not going to try to be Vader, because if I try to be Vader, I'm going to be behind Snoke the entire time. I'm going to be beneath Snoke. I got to go do my own thing. And I think he's just doing it just seemed to me like he was like, okay, look, I'm still very much, my intent is still on the dark side of things, but I'm not doing this First Order nonsense. I'm going to do me. I'm going to be in charge. I'm going to be supreme leader. We're going to do things my way. That's ultimately what he wants to get to.
Gotcha. So you think that the smashing of the mask, basically, that was like the turning point. That was like, all right, so I've symbolically smashed this mask. Now I'm going to be the Grand Master. I'm going to be the one pulling the puppet strings here. I'm going to execute what I want to do. Now I'm no longer going to be just an apprentice or a puppet to Snoke. And I think that makes sense. So, like you said, throughout Ren's arc, we see a number of things that he does to help somebody like Rey. Like, clearly he, like we said, we've said this on the show multiple times now, but he has some kind of connection with Rey. So whether or not that's through some unspeaken heritage that we don't know about yet, or it's just through the immense power that both of them have in the Force, whatever that is, they have some kind of connection, and he clearly, has some type of affection's not the right word, but he has some type of a link with her where he I don't know, how would you describe it? Like, he kind of sympathizes with her. He
I think
you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think he feels she will like complete him. Like but together they'll be able to feed off each other. They'll be able to. His weaknesses will become, will be made up by her strengths. Like, they'll be obviously the perfect like duo in terms of like what he wants to do.
Yeah, so I think that's a good way to put it. So, so with all this, man, and with all the stuff that Kylo's done, whether good or bad, so even though he killed Snoke and helped Rey, it's like he's still against the rebellion. He's attacking the rebellion when they end up on Crate at the end of the movie. And for me, man, when it comes down to it, when it's all said and done, he's responsible for killing Han Solo. So Kylo Ren will never be forgiven in my eyes. So I don't care what he does. It's always going to be a bitter pill for me to swallow if he ever fully transitions back to the light. I don't know that I'd be able to accept him, but overall, man, like what's your thoughts on Ren, his arc? Where do you think this is going, man?
Obviously, this now that he is Supreme Leader. I mean, obviously after he finished Snoke, he basically he basically told General Hux, "I am Supreme Leader," and General Hux is just a sad individual in this movie, but.
He's a whipping boy. That guy's always been irritating to me. He just looks like a douchebag, He just has that like douchebag look. So, and he plays that role extremely well. And like you said, very very good scene in that movie when he comes to Ren, tells him that the Supreme Leader is dead. He pulls out the lightsaber and he's like, "The Supreme Leader's dead, really?"
Right.
And he's like, hey, "There's a new Supreme Leader in town, baby."
Yeah.
So yeah.
But no, I like, again, more questions. What is Kylo Ren's ultimate intent? And that's what we need to find out. But I did like the actual performance of Ren this time around. I mean, in The Force Awakens, obviously he was a menacing character, but he was kind of like this emo, whiny baby sometimes. And I didn't really care for that part of it. But obviously he's matured much more. He's a much darker character this time. He's still full of a lot of rage. He hates Luke Skywalker. He hates what the Jedi stand for, and you really got a good glimpse of that, especially in the final scenes. So we obviously conflicted character, but I thought it was just a much better performance and a much better way to see his character evolving.
Yeah, definitely some more layers to his character, and just the design of Kylo Ren is just very cool. He's such a cool looking character. He's got that badass lightsaber, the mask, the hood. I miss seeing that. I wish he wouldn't have smashed his mask when at the end of the day. I think the design of Ren is exceptional, but it doesn't seem like we're gonna get the mask back anymore.
And see, and I was gonna say I don't mind the mask. Isn't there? I mean, obviously the mask was awesome, but I think with Adam Driver's type of performance, he's a very intense actor, and that's stuff that you don't you don't get that behind the mask. And obviously Adam Driver's a very talented actor. I don't know if you've ever seen some of his other work outside of these movies, but the guy has a lot of range. He can play very subtle roles. I think it was Midnight Sky or something along those lines, Midnight something, with Michael Shannon, and Adam Driver's in a very subdued, much more reserved role. And when you see him going from these different types of roles, he's a very, very impressive actor.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's probably what Rian Johnson saw from Adam Driver. He knows the kind of ability that Adam Driver has. There's a lot of talent in this current Star Wars trilogy. A lot of A-list actors and a lot of people with a lot of range and a lot of ability in these films. And he probably saw that with Driver, who probably has some of the most range. So he was like, let's get this mask off. Let's get some more emotion and intensity from this character. And I think you're right. At the end of the day, there's a lot of intense scenes in this movie. So they probably would not have hit home as much had he had the mask on still. So it's an interesting observation for sure. So as we stand here right now, like, what do you think Ren's like getting at? Is he just simply at this point he wants to rule the universe? I don't know if that's what he wants. Like, what do you think, man? Like, what are you feeling at this juncture?
I do think that's something that he is that is one of his end game is to be. He wants to rule the galaxy. He wants to impose his will. But yeah, I think there again, much like this whole movie itself, there's a lot of questions that remain, and there's a lot of curiosities of where these characters are going, what their full intent is. But I do believe Kylo Ren wants to dictate. He wants to rule the galaxy. But I do think there's more to it than that. What it is, though, I'm not sure. And we also want to hear from you, the viewers. If you got thoughts on this stuff, what Kylo Ren's intent is, what his plans are, your thoughts on his performance, and everything that we've talked about so far, make sure you sound off in the comments below. We want to get your thoughts. If you have different takes on things, we want to hear it. We're not saying we're Star Wars professionals and experts. Like, we don't know the lore as deep as many as you do. We want to hear from you, so sound off in the comments.
Yeah, and with Ren, man, I don't know. I just don't feel like ruling the universe is what he wants. I almost feel like deep down he just wants some kind of like some closure, some like peace within inside of himself. He's been fighting this kind of battle between the light and the dark ever since he was born, basically. He's got Leia's genes, but he's also got the heritage of Darth Vader in his blood as well. So he's been kind of fighting this battle between the light and the dark since he was born. And I think ultimately, like at the end of the day, he just wants some kind of peace and solitude within himself. So maybe he thinks that if he rules the universe and nobody will bother him anymore, like that maybe that's the way that he achieves this. But I think I feel like deep down though, like he just wants some kind of just stability in his psychosis, man. He's just so unstable, and that obviously takes a lot out of him. And he has some intense feelings for his family and the people that he once loved. So I know a lot of that has to eat at him, and I just think maybe he thinks that if he rules the galaxy, maybe all that's gonna go away.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of where we're at with that. So yeah, Ren, a very conflicted character. And so what did you think the way kind of everything played out? So at the movie, he's evil. He's getting berated by Snoke. Then we see him turn with Rey and take out the Red Guard. Then he's back to being evil, commanding the First Order and attacking the rebellion once again. Like, were you on board with the way his storyline played out?
Well, I want to say no because, like I said, I want to know what his intent is. I want to know what everyone's doing. But, I mean, that's all part of what I think Rian Johnson wants to do. He wants to keep people guessing. Everyone wants answers. Rian Johnson's like, damn it, you'll get your answers when we're ready to give them to you. But in the meantime, we want you thinking. We want to keep you interested. We want to keep you guessing. And that's, again, I think that just is the biggest comparison to the original trilogy. It's not easy to predict what's going to happen here. And actually, I'm starting to warm up to that idea. It's taking me a little time to get used to, but I do like where they're going with this. I just don't know where it's going. I want to know.
Yeah, and that's probably a compliment more than anything, right? Like, we want to know what's happening.
Oh yeah,
with these movies and with these characters. Now, from there, I think we need to transition to Luke. We haven't talked about Luke yet. Obviously, Luke, a central figure in The Last Jedi. But not the main character, as some people may have thought going into this film. And I know there's going to be some controversy with Luke and the way he's portrayed in this film. So Luke, we see him in the beginning. He's this Jedi hermit at this point. He doesn't want to be involved with anything. He tells Rey as much, like, I came to this island to die. Like, I just want to be left alone. He's kind of burdened by his failures with Kylo Ren. And, he feels like he's let down Leia and Han and everybody in his life. So he's just kind of he just wanted to go to this island and just kind of wither away. So when Rey shows up, obviously he's not happy about this. She shows up with the lightsaber, trying to get him to come back and save the rebellion. And Luke's like, "Look, I don't want any part of this. No rebellions, no lightsabers." He's actually removed himself from the Force. He's not even in tune with the Force on this island anymore, which is nuts. Obviously, he's a Jedi master at this point. So, some very interesting developments there. Eventually, he agrees to teach Rey in another very funny moment with R2-D2, where he plays Leia's kind of original message to Obi-Wan in Seek of Help. Luke says something. He sees R2 again for the first time in a long time. He says something to the effect of, "There's nothing you guys can do to make me join back into the battle." R2 plays that message and he says like that was a dirty move, man. So R2 plays that message, and then he then agrees to give Rey 3 lessons to kind of help her hone her ability with the Force. And in another very funny moment, in that first lesson when he's telling her to reach out, and she reaches out with her hands, and he's got this like stick or something, and he's like, "You feel that? You feel that?" And she's like, "Yes, I feel it. That's the Force." And then he smacks her hand. He's like, "I'm telling you to reach out with your mind, not your hands." So that was really funny. I probably didn't explain that right. You have to watch.
No, you did it right. And it's funny. The one thing that he also mentions too is that he goes, "I'm going to teach you 3 lessons of why the Force is bad." Yeah. That's why he said that, and that was a key thing there. But I noticed when he goes, "I'm going to teach you 3 lessons about why all this is bad."
Yeah,
and
or why the Jedi should end.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And he does. Yeah. He goes each time he shows her, something new. He shows her she basically makes something bad happen. Where he's like, "See, this is why this stuff is bad."
Yeah, and we've alluded to this as we've talked earlier, but what did you think about the interpretation of the Force in this movie? So we have when Rey is first getting trained, that first lesson is about the Force. And Luke kind of gives us the most clear explanation we've ever had about what the Force is, right? The Force is everywhere. It's kind of the energy that binds the universe and so on and so forth. There's a lot more to it. But and like you said when speaking about the boy, the Force is not limited to just the Jedi alone. And he very matter-of-factly says that. He's like, Jedi, Sith, like none of this stuff matters.
Right.
He's like, just because you're a Jedi, that doesn't mean you're the only one that can wield the Force. The Force is everywhere. It's in everything. So it was a really interesting take on the Force, and gave us our kind of best explanation of it so far, in my opinion. What do you think of how the Force was handled in this film?
I feel like the Force is depicted more as an unstable, dangerous entity of some sort. Like it's because in the wrong hands, obviously, if anybody can wield it, it can be very useful, but it can also be extremely, extremely dangerous. And that's why I feel like in this, in the first three movies, everyone was like, "Oh, the Force is this beautiful thing that Luke uses to defeat evil." Whereas in this one, it's just kind of more like, look, the Force. Again, this goes back to your gray area comment. Is the Force is there, but it's not all entirely good depending on who's wielding it.
Yeah, very, very interesting take on the Force, and I personally liked it. It's just like you said, it fits in with the whole shades of gray in this movie, and it gives the Force kind of a whole nother dimension from what we've seen in the previous films. So we see Luke, he's training Rey. They're learning about the Force. He gives her a few more lessons. They make some funny quips about the Force is more than just lifting rocks and whatnot. At the end of all of this, Luke is still, actually, no, but before that, Rey confronts Luke about the truth behind what happened between him and Kylo Ren. So let's talk about that right now. So Ren basically tells Rey that Luke tried to kill me in my sleep, and that's kind of why I lashed out and why I don't like Luke and the Jedi and all that kind of stuff, and that was kind of the downfall of Luke and the Knights of Ren and all that kind of stuff. So he tells that side of the story. She confronts him about it, and then Luke adds that extra layer to it that Ren obviously left out. So he talks about how he sensed the power and the darkness that was inside of Ren, a darkness that he didn't think he had the ability to control or to get under, to bring over to the light side, to do anything with. He was almost like, look, this guy is like pure evil. He has to be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So for a fleeting moment there, he activates his lightsaber and he considers striking down Ren in his sleep. Now he says he quickly comes to his senses, thinks better of it, but at this point Ren has already woken up from his sleep, sees Luke standing over him with his lightsaber, not entirely aware of his intent at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and then he lashes out, and that was kind of the creation of Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
So a very powerful moment in the film. One of the big questions that we had from The Force Awakens was about what happened between Luke and Ren,
Mm-hmm.
and now we know with what we found out in The Last Jedi. So let me get your thoughts on that reveal, man. How did you feel about this? How did you feel about the way that played out?
It's almost similar to what we thought about Rogue One. The one thing that we liked about the Rebellion is that we kind of learned that there's some nitty-gritty stuff. There's a dark side to the Rebellion. Well, they're the good guys. There's a dark side to it, and this is where we see kind of a dark side of Luke. I mean, obviously he senses the evil, and he's so quick to kill Ren. He has to stop and think about it. He has to catch himself. So, I mean, we kind of see another side of Luke, another side of a Jedi Master who's ready to kill this kid, his nephew, based on a feeling he's getting from him, but then he's able to gather himself. But like you said, at that point, it's too late, and Kylo Ren brings down the building, the surrounding building around them. So, again, a very dark scene. We start to see, again, more gray area with the Jedi.
Yeah. And I was happy when we got the extra twist that Luke put on the story, because when we first heard about this, I was like, man, I don't know about Luke just coming in and trying to kill Ren in his sleep. Like that's not what I want to see from this character.
Right.
So when we find out, and I had a feeling that this is going to be the case. It was not just going to be as simple as Luke marched in there and wanted to kill Ren, this kid in his sleep. So just to find out that this was just a fleeting moment, and it was a mistake he made that he could never take back. Like this is like some heavy stuff that really puts a twist on this character, and like you said, just kind of goes in with what we've been talking about with the shades of gray in this universe and the way that this story played out. So ultimately, I think at the end of the day, this kind of fits in with the tone of this movie and with the story that they're trying to tell of these characters that are much more complex than they were back, in the original trilogy. There's a lot of different dynamics at play here. So, yeah, eventually, I think the way that all worked out was actually a really impactful reveal. So following that, Rey leaves from Luke, goes to she goes to see Ren, and we've talked about what happens there, and Luke just kind of sits on the island until. Basically the end of the film. The rebellion is down to its last few ships, its last few remaining members of the rebellion are kind of running for their life as the First Order is trying to snuff them out and track them down. They retreat to this planet called Crate, where there's an old rebel base nearby that's heavily armored that they think that they can stow themselves away in and kind of protect themselves. But of course, the First Order shows up. They've got walkers. They've got this big, huge battering ram laser cannon that's going to, blow a hole in the wall and kind of end the rebellion once and for all. So, things are looking hopeless. The rebellion is down to their wits' end. And then, of course, Luke shows up. So he marches in from the. It was cool looking back the way that they set this all up, because Luke shows up in the base there. And, I think it's Poe who mentions it when they're trying to find an escape route. They're like, well, Luke got in here. Like, how did he get in here?
Right.
And so Luke comes in through the back alley. He confronts Leia for the first time in a long time.
Or did he even come in at all?
No, he didn't.
That's what we're that's where he's like, how Luke get in here? Well, I don't think Luke came in. I think he just we'll talk about that in a second, but I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm getting at, like the way that they set this up with how he came in, where there was no back entrance, because we see that there's rocks in front of the entrance that's kind of block the path there.
Yep.
So how there was rocks there, how all of the walkers like fire on him simultaneously on Ren's order. So Luke, he sees Leia, he's here to to kind of save the rebellion, and Poe picks up on this as Luke goes out there. He's like, Luke is stalling so that we can escape. So Luke goes out there. Ren sees him, orders all of the walkers to fire on him, and Hux makes the funny comment like, "Do you think you got him?" So they fire 50 different blasts at him, and then Luke's just standing there, and then
I love Luke's,
yeah, does the little shoulder swipe. So of course the audience going wild at this point as Luke emerges from that. So Ren comes down to confront him face to face, and we're like, all right, we're finally, we've built up to this moment, Ren versus Luke. So they engage in a brief clash, and at one point, Luke kind of does the Obi-Wan thing. He kind of puts his lightsaber away. If you strike me down now, I'll become more powerful than you can ever imagine. That's not what he said, but it was something to that effect. So Ren charges at him. We see the lightsaber basically looks like it cuts him in half. And it's interesting too because the red like sulfur that those ships leave behind looks kind of like blood. Yeah. So he slides on this red stuff, and you kind of think for a minute like, oh, did he just slice Luke in half? And that's like his blood that he slided on. But Luke turns around, and then we find out that it's been an astral projection all along, and we find Luke on the Jedi Island using every last ounce of his strength to astral project himself
across the
galaxy to create in a really incredible moment in the film. Obviously the crowd is going wild at this point when we find out that Ren's been had. Ren is pissed off, of course. The rebellion has escaped, and on the back end here, Rey has a really great moment of her own when it calls back to her lifting rocks comment. Yep. She lifts the rocks from the back entrance to the cave, and everybody escapes into the Millennium Falcon or the
it was the Falcon.
It was the Falcon. Yeah. Yep. So into the Millennium Falcon, and then the rebellion kind of lives on from there. So Luke, he finishes his astral projection. He kind of passes out on this rock that he's sitting on, and then he pulls himself up and he sees the sunset. Obviously a call back to Luke on Tatooine, looking out into the sunset. So a really beautiful connection made there by Rian Johnson. The John Williams music's playing here at this point, and then Luke just. The cloak drops and he just kind of fades away. So Leia, I think she's talking to Poe at this point, or don't remember who she was talking to, but she says Luke's gone, or she's talking to Rey at this point. Luke's gone. And so from what we can gather, it seems like that was the end of Luke Skywalker. That was the end of his story. That was his kind of final hurrah, saving the rebellion, confronting Ren through astral projection, and it was like he had finally found peace with himself, so to speak, and he just kind of faded away into the Force, man. So all that said, your thoughts on the end of Luke Skywalker's story?
Well, first of all, I want to touch on the one scene where he first appears in that Rebel base. There's an awesome moment with him and Leia that was just beautiful, and Leia says something along the lines, we're going to die here. I can't remember what she said, or something happens here. And he says, no one ever really dies. I think something to that effect. And it was just, that kind of took me out of the movie for a moment, and just kind of I thought it was like a nice, beautiful parting way gift to like Carrie Fisher. I mean, I know it wasn't intended as that, but at the time, obviously, but I just felt that was a real beautiful scene. The lighting was there, and you had Luke and Leia, and I actually thought that was a pretty emotional moment. I thought that was just, even though it wasn't the intent of the scene, just the way it was shot, it was almost perfect. Yeah. And I believe
he hands her the gold dice from the Falcon.
Yep, and just the way, I believe he says, he goes, we all no one ever really dies, or something along to that effect. And it was just a beautiful scene. And I really love that one. And then like you mentioned, the scene after he does the astral projection, and Luke is obviously at first I wasn't sure why he died, but I mean, you mentioned that he's out of touch, he's out of tune with the Force. He's not. I said that's why he's not there fighting. He's older. He's like you said, he kind of went to this island because he hasn't been doing his training. He hasn't been doing anything, so he's obviously not in any shape or any condition to go and battle Kylo Ren there. So he has used his astral projection as one last, legendary move to allow the rebellion to get away. And like you said, that scene where he kind of pulls himself up, you can tell he's out of energy, and that's going to be it. And just the way he looks at the sun, I mean, that's where I got tears, because I was just like, dude, this is where it all started with Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
You know, he's out that one night and he's looking at the two suns, trying to figure out where's my place in this world, in this universe, and that's what he sees before he moves on or passes away or dies, or does he die? I don't know if he'll return in in the form of like Yoda and Obi-Wan after they kind of were passed on, but just a stirring ending, and I thought that was beautiful. And overall, man, I just want to say I thought Mark Hamill was brilliant as Luke Skywalker. Absolutely brilliant, because if you look back at the original trilogy, Luke Skywalker was that aw shucks blonde hair kid. He was just not a whole lot of, like, I don't want to say it was a shallow character, but not a whole lot of range involved. Just this and that. But man, Rian Johnson looked at Mark Hamill's body of work since then. I'm sure his voice acting performances have all come into play. He'd let Mark Hamill do Mark Hamill. I mean, like you said, with these moments of levity, there was so much humor in Mark Hamill's performance. But Mark Hamill also dug deep, man. You got to see a side of Luke Skywalker, like you said, a broken down man, conflicted on the inside. He shoulders a lot of the blame for what happened to Kylo Ren. And you can just tell he's an embattled character. He's beat down, and Mark Hamill just nailed it. He had so much more dimension to him than any of the previous Star Wars movie by far. I thought it was by far his best performance as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I mean, when Star Wars came on the scene, Mark Hamill was just getting started.
Yeah.
He was just getting into his acting career. He's a much different actor today than he was when he was, the like you said, the aw shucks kid.
Yeah.
In Star Wars in 1977. I mean, since then he's made quite the reputation, especially in his voice work, and no secret that his turn as the Joker is legendary. His performances, especially in something like Arkham Knight, where he just gives this legendary, like, one of a kind, like, voice performance in that game. Like, that's the kind of stuff he's been able to do in honing his craft over the years. And no question that played a role in some of the things he was able to do with The Last Jedi, and why Rian Johnson probably went some of the places that he did with him, because he is a much different actor now than he was way back when. So this is going to be very controversial with Star Wars fans, the way Luke kind of finished out. Like, I know there were a lot of fans, like, they wanted to see Luke be a badass one more time. Like, they wanted to see him get in there and get down and dirty, and so part of me was it was, like you said, it's just, at the end of the day, it was so beautifully done, the way the astral projection played out, and with the suns and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of a similar feeling of conflict that I had watching Han die in The Force Awakens. The moment and the acting, the performance in that scene was so well done. But it's like, man, just to see my favorite character then fall to his death, it's like how do you process something like that? And like, to see Luke in this scene play out, and his final moment, his, like, ultimate crowning achievement as a Jedi and saving the rebellion, and we see all this play out, but man, he just kind of fades into the sunset. We don't get to see him be that badass anymore. We don't get to see him have that one last hurrah as a master Jedi. We just it's kind of the tricks and the sorcery of the Force that he uses to kind of make his last statement. And so it's just a great conflict, man. It's like I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that scene.
Right.
Like and it's also that was the scene too where, and it's been apparent from the beginning, but this is a movie about Rey and about Kylo Ren and about Finn. Like, these are the stars of the movie now. So Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, like the characters that we grew up with, and the Star Wars characters that made us love the franchise to begin with, like, they're kind of the secondary characters now, and their stories are coming to an end, and it's time to move on from here. So Han is dead, Luke is transitioned to the Force, Carrie Fisher has passed on, so we don't know what's going to become of Leia in the final film. So I mean, all of our heroes are gone, dude. I mean, hell, Admiral Akbar died in this movie. Dude, Akbar just got blown off the bridge. Like, what?
Dude, I was so pissed because, like, as they're explaining things, he's like, and Admiral Akbar is gone. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, wait, that's it? Akbar's gone? Oh.
That's it, man. Like, Akbar just gone.
Yeah.
And we saw an interesting moment there too with Leia, where she's floating in space, and she floats her way back to the ship, almost like. to me, this was like the first time we ever see her kind of utilize the Force.
Yeah.
So she
in a very, very unexpected way. I mean, like,
yeah.
I thought, I was like, okay, this is it for Luke. Or my intention was, okay, Leia just died. Luke's gonna feel that. Then he's gonna come back into the game, and he's back. But then, like you said, she basically what happens is the ship that they're on gets attacked. The whole bridge gets just obliterated, and everyone gets sucked out into space. And as the camera shoots, or this panning shot of like everyone out in space, it zooms in on Leia, and it looks like she's about to die, and all of a sudden her eyes just open, and she does the Mary Poppins through space, and comes back aboard the destroyed bridge, and then Poe and those guys let her in, and she's like in some sort of a coma or something along those lines. But it was just I thought that was like you said, it's the first time we've ever seen Princess Leia actually going full force. Yeah. I mean, she's always she's always understood that she's got it in her, but this is the first time we've actually seen Princess Leia like just go, okay, cool, my turn to use this. And you're just like, it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, okay, wow, because that's so out of we just never ever seen that from her character.
Yeah. So I kind of thought it was a cool moment. It was kind of goofy, her in space and freezing and waking up and then flying over to the ship, like you said, Mary Poppins style. But yeah, it's like we got to see Leia, kind of one last hurrah for her as well. We got to see her kind of tap into the Force. Obviously, she's Luke's twin sister. She's got the Jedi heritage in her blood as well. So it was cool to see that moment for Leia, and she had some some nice moments throughout. So in terms of Luke, then to kind of put a bow on Luke's story, Brent, are you ultimately satisfied with how Luke came to an end, how his story came to an end? Do you feel like you're fulfilled in terms of his character arc?
Again, that was one of the, like you said, this is going to be very polarizing for a lot of fans of the series, and I would have loved to have seen him and Kylo Ren really go at it with an awesome lightsaber battle. But that's just, we go back to what you talked about, this being more grounded, and Luke Skywalker was much, much, much older. He's been out of tune with the Force. He has not been training. I think it would have been less believable for him to show up and just start doing backflips and doing a full-on fight. I mean, we've seen this guy on the island. He's a decrepit older person, a shell of his former self. And I think
he did just do the greatest move in the history of the Force, though. I mean, he astral projected across the entire universe, and confronted Ren. So that's a pretty OG move.
Yeah, and that's boss. But that's not what I think a lot of fans were expecting when he showed up. I mean, they expected a full-on lightsaber battle, a la him and Vader and Jedi. But that's not what we got. And so I think that's why it's a little bit harder for some folks to accept that. But I did think that it was a very fitting way to end his story arc, and I really liked how he talks about earlier in the show. He's like, what did he say? He goes legends. He goes, I'm not a legend. I'm a failure. He's like, nobody's ever gonna. They're only gonna remember my failures. And then obviously at the very end, when we talk about that kid that pulled over the broom, there he is. He's reenacting with these toys, Luke's lasting legacy. I mean, he's a legend again. This is what Luke did. He stood in front of these AT-ATs and they fired upon him. And I just thought that was a nice little nod to Luke. Like, you are now a legend and you will forever be remembered as one.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great point. So that's a good connection there. Yeah, so that was kind of like the main storylines that were going on in the film. There was some other stuff that happened as well with some of the other characters. So I want to touch on them briefly. First off with Finn. So Finn, we meet Rose for the first time, who's I don't know, a mechanic or an engineer or something in the Rebel Alliance here. So they meet by happenstance, and then Poe is. So as with Leia injured and in that coma, like you said, Laura Dern had to step in. Her character, her name escapes me right now.
General or Admiral Hollard,
something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so she steps in with her character to assume the role of kind of commander or general of the rebellion, and her and Poe are kind of at odds.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more to it than it first seems. Like
Yeah.
Poe doesn't really understand the plan and what exactly is happening. So he's being the brash character that he is. He starts kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do behind the scenes to try and save the rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
So him and Finn and Rose come up with this plan that they're going to basically hack into this network on the First Order's like main ship, and it's because they've figured out a way to track the rebellion through hyperspace.
Mm-hmm.
So through light speed.
Mm-hmm.
So this has never been done before, but they figured out a way to do it. And what Poe and Finn and Rose figured out is if they can get on the First Order ship, if they can disable this tracking system that they have in there, they'll have 6 minutes for the rebellion to hit light speed and zoom off and get out of the First Order's range, so they can go somewhere else to try and escape from them. So they hatch this plan, and they have to go to this casino planet to find this guy who's a master code breaker, so that when they break into the First Order ship, they have this person that can get in there and get them into the room so they can disable. So Rose can get in there and disable the shield and all that kind of stuff. So there's some cool moments with Finn and with Rose, and Poe has a great moment at the beginning of the movie as he's leading the fleet against as is customary for a Star Wars film, starts off with a bang, right?
Yeah.
So big time space battle. Poe's involved with that. Poe has some great scenes with Laura Dern and with Leia as well throughout the film. But for the most part, even though like the rebellion and them being chased by the First Order is kind of like the main plot of the film, it's also kind of like secondary.
It is.
Like
yeah.
like to me, Finn and Rose and Poe, they were always kind of on the periphery of the story,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of just felt like in The Last Jedi they were trying to find things for them to do. Like they were extending their story by sending them to that casino planet to find a master code breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of that stuff just kind of felt like filler
Yeah.
to try and give them something to do in the film. What was your thoughts on the way kind of all those guys played out?
Yeah, I mean, I like Poe and I like Finn, but obviously Finn took a major backseat compared to The Force Awakens. He wasn't he wasn't as integral to the plot. I mean, obviously he had a job to do, but I mean, you could have sent anybody on that mission, but you have to have Finn there. And I thought his battle with Phasma, Captain Phasma, was pretty sweet.
Yeah,
but,
and Phasma, another one who just bit the dust without doing much of anything.
Yep,
so.
Quick battle and then a demise, and you're just like, man, all these people that are like seriously, all the main like antagonists, like the major characters, Hux, is just like I said, is just a bitch this time around. I mean, seriously, he's a punchline in just about every scene. Phasma's gone, Snoke is gone. It's just like all these main like villains, like these integral pieces of just are gone now. And you're just like, so is it just Ren in the next one? I mean, is that it? I mean, it's just. But
Ren and Hux, two peas in a pod.
Yeah, the buddy right there. But But as far as like Poe goes, I thought Poe's character was really cool. I mean, obviously he has his moments, and but you got to see him mature more as a character, take on more of a leadership role, which I think was ultimately what Leia wanted of him. Compared to what happens at the beginning, he leads that attack, probably should have aborted, lost all like their entire bombing division, and Leia was not happy about that. But as the story goes on, with everything that's happening with the First Order chasing them, him at odds with Laura Dern's character, you kind of see Poe mature more as a leader, and I thought that was really good. But it was Finn and Rose's stories that I found them to be kind of shallow, like you said. They weren't as like Finn's character wasn't nearly as interesting this time around as he was in The Force Awakens. So I'm kind of curious to where they're going to go with Finn. But I thought Rose was an interesting character. Again, we didn't get to learn a lot about her. And we know she's from that area. I think she's from that planet with the casino, correct?
Maybe. I don't remember.
I thought that was
she might be. She knew the history of the planet.
Yeah,
whether
she
or not
knew the
she
history
was,
of the planet.
She may have been from it. She did sound like she was maybe alluding to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought like you said, it was just kind of like filler. It was just filler there, and I mean that typically happens when you got a movie that runs 2.5 hours. I mean, you got to have something going to keep other stories going. So, but that's basically my take on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love those characters too. I really like Poe, really like Finn. Like they're great additions to the Star Wars canon. I like Rose's character as well. She's this kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like idealistic member of the rebellion, and I like that about her character. There's a really nice moment at the end of the film between her and Finn, where she's kind of has one of these kind of bright moments. I don't remember exactly what she says, but they share a moment together about kind of the future of the rebellion that I thought was really good. So yes, hopefully they have a more pronounced role as we get to the end of this trilogy here. But yeah, for the most part, their story was just kind of like finding something for them to do, and then along the way they meet Benicio del Toro, and was it common knowledge that he was in this movie? I didn't even know he was in this movie.
I did remember hearing that he was casted for it, but they didn't really get into specifics of what his character would be.
Gotcha. Now, I don't know if you were thinking this, but when they reached out to Maz, who also showed up for a second, she was in the middle of a battle with something. They just kind of FaceTimed her, for lack of a better word. They FaceTimed her, and she was like, all right, if you're going to do what you guys are trying to do, you need a master code breaker when you get onto the First Order ship. Now, my thought, when they said master code breaker, go to this casino planet, find this guy wearing this certain thing on his lapel, I was like, are we going to get Lando right here? Like, is this going to be Lando as the master code breaker? Like, to me, that because they didn't say the name of the character. They didn't say, go look for this guy.
Right.
They said, go look for the master code breaker with this on his lapel. Because they didn't tell us his name, I was like, oh, man, is this going to be Lando? Are they going to bring Lando back right now? I thought that would have been so cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't Lando.
Nope.
It was some guy that we didn't even meet. So it ended up, Benicio del Toro ended up having to be the guy, and he goes with them. He's this kind of very interesting character because he kind of sums up the kind of the theme of the movie.
Yeah.
What we've been talking about with the shades of gray. He says as much.
Yep.
He's like, look, this the people, the rich people on this planet, they're dealing weapons to both the rebellion and the empire.
Right.
Like, this is going two ways in this street here, and he's telling Finn and Rose, like, that's how I live my life.
Yeah.
I just kind of go from place to place. There's no good or bad with me.
Yeah.
It's just I'm going from next thing to next thing in my life, and of course, once they get on the ship, he breaks them into the area. They get captured by the First Order. The First Order pays Benicio his money. I don't remember the name of his character. They pay him his money, and he kind of goes about his way.
Yeah.
What'd you think about Benicio, man?
I hope we can explore him more in the next one, or hopefully he's a part of a spin-off somewhere, because like you said, it was just a very interesting character. He helps them on this dangerous mission that he could be killed, but they ended up getting a payout, and he goes about his business and he leaves and he gets paid. So no, again, like you said, it's just the focus on these characters, the shadiness, and not everyone is who they appear to be.
Yeah, and he was a guy that was like plucked straight out of Rogue One. Like that's the type of character we would have saw in that film. So it's nice to see them continuing that thread here. So yeah. I also want to give a special shout out to Laura Dern. Thought she was excellent.
Yeah.
In this movie.
She has
really,
an
really
epic
good
scene too. I mean, when she takes down the was that another dreadnought?
I don't know if they considered that a dreadnought or not, but it was like the main First Order ship.
It was
Snoke ship. Yeah.
And dude, I mean, she takes that thing into light speed right through the
last piece
fleet.
of fuel.
Yeah.
Last piece of fuel, and there's this epic moment. I mean, an epically filmed scene.
Yeah.
There's like silence as this.
It was awesome when they cut the sound. I was like,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, she just basically takes that ship, that transport ship, locks it in right towards a Snoke ship, calls in light speed, and just obliterates everything in its path. It was just an epic scene. I was like, oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate that she met her demise in that movie. She really, really excellent in this movie. Had some great scenes with Poe, some great scenes with Leia. So sad to see her go, but she definitely left her mark on Star Wars history.
Oh yeah.
With her impression here. So really, really good stuff from Laura Dern. So overall, Brent, one other thing I want to touch on here is the pacing of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So I alluded to this earlier, but to me, I felt like the movie climaxed in Snoke's throne room. Like, to me, that was like the build up, like this thing we've been building up to throughout the film and throughout the Force Awakens. And this happens, and Snoke's cut in half, and then we tear up the Red Guard. And to me, it felt like, like the movie should be ending at that point. But then there's a whole other part of the movie after that. There's the scenes with Luke and all the stuff on Crate. So it's got to build up and then build up to another climax with Luke and Ren and Rey coming in and saving everybody in the Millennium Falcon. Obviously, this is a long film. When it was all said and done, though, what did you think about the way the movie was structured?
You see, I think I thought it was decent pacing, but I do think the reason that the middle section, like you mentioned, in the throne room was very climactic. It was intense, and then they go to. I think the whole Luke scene was meant to be the climactic scene, but because it's just so different, and it wasn't. I think what a lot of people expected. I think that kind of brings it down a little bit, so it's not the big climactic scene that everyone was hoping for. So, I mean, if you go from one high, and that's why it seems like the throne room now is like the big scene, because the ending wasn't as big as it should have been to a lot of people. But, I mean, when you look at everything that happens in the ending scene, you look at the symbolism, you look at what the shot of Luke looking at the two suns, I think to some Star Wars fans, it's like you said, it's the closure. But to other Star Wars fans, they were looking for an epic battle at the end, and they didn't get that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, man. And she kind of goes back to what we've been saying. Like, this is an unexpected Star Wars film. They do some different things with the franchise and with the structure of the film. And the movies, it's kind of a slow build up until that middle section. There's a lot. There's the big action scene at the beginning with the space battles and with Poe and taking down the Dreadnought and all that kind of stuff. That's an incredibly intense scene as well. When they've got Rose's sister in there and she's like kicking the
trying to get
the remote down so she can drop the bombs. That was a great scene. So really, really strong opening to the film. Then we get a lot of build up and the stuff with Luke, and there's a lot of kind of slow building to some of the mysteries and the characters and things.
And that's the other issue is you have this build up. Okay, we're gonna find out who she is, and again, we don't get that delivery, even though it's Rian Johnson saying, hey, look, here's the direction we're going with this. Not everybody has to be a Jedi. So again, it's how it's interpreted, how people view it. That might have been pretty kind of like disappointing to most people, but there are other people who see it from another light, see it from another perspective. Where they're like, hey, look, she's nobody, and that's kind of a big reveal. I mean, if you, it's a strange way to say that because it's such a departure from what we're used to. That is a big reveal that she isn't somebody special.
Yeah, and you really gotta check your expectations with this film, and because like you said, there's going to be some twists, there's going to be some turns that are much different than what Star Wars fans are accustomed to. So I'm curious how this film is going to view on a second watching now that we kind of know exactly how this is going to play out. So you're gonna see it soon with when you have family in town. I'm gonna try to give it. I would really like to see this in the IMAX or something. Yeah. See if I can sneak out and get an IMAX viewing one of these days. But so I'm looking forward to watching this again, and I think like you said, that makes sense now that we're talking about it. It's like you build up to this climax in the middle of the film, but at the end of the day, like, this is Luke Skywalker we're talking about. So if we're gonna end his story, like, we need to end his story on a high note. Like, he's got to be kind of the final scene of the film. So they build up to this big climax in the throne room, and then they build up to another like kind of farewell for Luke. So I think looking back on it, it makes sense. The way that everything played out. So my final question for you, Brent, is, as we stand right here a day later after we've seen The Last Jedi, just initial thoughts. Where does The Last Jedi fall in the Star Wars pantheon of films? Where does this one rank?
Man, and that's the thing. Leaving yesterday from the theater, I was like, man, I don't know where I would put this one. And, talking about it with you here and kind of like clearing, getting a clearer picture of things and kind of appreciating things that maybe I didn't appreciate upon first viewing, maybe it's a little bit higher. And I think going in on a second time is going to be key. I'll be able to, make a more informed decision on that. I don't want to say right now. I can't say right now because I just don't know where this one falls. But upon, maybe seeing it a second time, close up some loose ends, figure some things out, and then I'll be able to say, okay, look, this is actually a pretty damn good Star Wars movie. It's just a lot different than what we expected. Or I could go see it a second time and be like, man, I'm still pissed that Maz doesn't tell me how she found Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. That is probably the one thing that irked me the most. Damn it, in The Force Awakens, when Han Solo's down at the bottom of Maz's restaurant, they're in that room, and he asks her, where did you get that from? And she's like, a good question for another time. And I'm thinking, hey, the perfect time is episode 8. But all we get is Maz in a first-person shooter for two minutes, and she's gone. I'm just like, dude, I want to know that because, man, it's things like that. When I hear characters say stuff like that, I'm like, okay, that's going to be important. I want to hear that story. It's going to be integral to the plot, and nothing. And I was just like, dude, damn it.
Yeah. We're all interested to see where that lightsaber came from in that story, but like you said, maybe that's for another. Maybe it's just as simple as, actually, well, here's the thing: when we see the scene in the past with Luke and Ren, where he's standing over his bed and he activates his lightsaber, that's not his old lightsaber. It's a green one. It's not Luke's lightsaber.
Yeah, it's not the blue one, right?
It's not the blue one from the past that Rey was using. So he lost that lightsaber even prior to that moment. So, so somewhere there's some kind of a story to tell. And maybe it's not important to the main arc of Star Wars. So maybe that's something we'll have to find out in a book or in a comic book or something in the future.
It'll be in a story add-on for Battlefront 2.
Yeah, maybe so, man.
Just drop it in nonchalant. I'd be so pissed. But overall, I mean, you know, like I said, being able to talk about this more, and there's stuff I want to hear from the viewers, and I'm gonna probably start digging into some forums and stuff to see what like some of the real hardcore Star Wars fans think. You know, that's the stuff I want to hear because usually they can toss stuff. You know, I got a couple buddies that I talk to that are just love Star Wars. That they've read the books, they read the comics, and they can always provide some insight to things I might have missed. And you know, so I want to learn more about what everything that was going on in this movie. But like I said, in terms of craftsmanship, Rian Johnson has the tools. He knows how to make an entertaining Star Wars movie. When everything was ramped up, it was like you said, on the edge of your seat. A visual feast, and the performances were great as well. I just think the entire story from start to finish is just something that's going to take. It's going to be an acquired taste. It might be something that'll take time to get to really appreciate, and I think that's where we're at. That's where I'm at right now with this movie.
Yeah, and obviously it's tough. One day removed, only seen it once. To place where The Last Jedi ranks in the pantheon of Star Wars, because I've seen the other ones so much. I've seen the original trilogy so many times. Even the prequel trilogy, I've seen those a bunch of times. So I've seen those. I've watched Force Awakens many times. Seen Rogue One multiple times. So you watch all these movies over and over and over. So it's tough to battle with your nostalgia and figure out where you want to place The Last Jedi. It's a different kind of Star Wars movie. Just at first blush, as we sit here, like I don't know if I'll ever be able to put something above Empire, just because of, like I said, the nostalgia for that movie. You know, are The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi better than Empire? Probably. Like, they're probably better movies. There's better performances, there's better writing, there's better, like, everything than in that movie. But it's just, you know, the stuff that happens in Empire is so iconic, and so I don't know that'll ever be topped for me. But, you know, I would put probably The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi above any other Star Wars movie outside of Empire, and I'd be pretty comfortable doing that. I absolutely love The Force Awakens. Han Solo, I said, is my favorite character, so to see him play such a prominent role in that movie and just the sense of fun in that movie, I'm a big fan of the way J.J. Abrams makes films. I love his sense of adventure that he imparts in his movies. And The Last Jedi, just a dark Star Wars film, but just with just a lot going on. So as we sit here right now, somewhere after Empire and somewhere around Force Awakens, The Last Jedi is going to sit. We'll have to see how the hierarchy works its way out. But as we sit here a day removed, it's pretty high up on my list of Star Wars movies. So any final thoughts, Brent? Anything else you wanted to touch on before we kind of wrap this up?
I can't think of anything right now, man. Like I said, I'm sure I go see it a second time, I'm going to come back to you and be like, all right, dude, here's some things I found. But like I said, it was an entertaining movie. You know, if you sit down for a 2.5-hour movie and it goes by quick, it's doing something right. So, I mean, I won't say the movie wasn't entertaining. It was very, very entertaining. It was just a much different Star Wars movie than I'm accustomed to.
Yeah, and I really enjoy getting the chance to just sit down here and talk through this stuff with you, and that's one of the things I was looking forward to doing after I watch this movie, because there's so much to process.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to sit down here, talk things through, and kind of figure it out. Like, I have a clearer picture of the movie now. I have a clearer picture of some of the things I liked and didn't like, and some of the things I appreciate about this film.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that you've pointed out that I didn't even notice. So I feel good about having this conversation now, and I can't wait to see The Last Jedi again, man. It was I walked out of the theater like just giddy with Star Wars excitement, and there was a lot of really just memorable moments in this film that I'll be going back to for many years to come.
Absolutely. And we want to hear from you. If you've been watching this video and you've got thoughts or scenes that you loved, or if there were criticisms you have about the movie, make sure you let us know in the comments below. We'll be reading them. We'll reply. But we want to hear from you as well. We want to get your thoughts. We want to hear from the Star Wars community your take on The Last Jedi. This is a very polarizing title. If you go on social media or on forums, you can see that it's very divided. Some people love it. Some people appreciate what Rian Johnson and Disney is trying to do with the franchise. Others not so much. So make sure you sound off with the comments. Let us know your thoughts. We want to hear from you. This is going to be a great topic for years to come.
Bingo. So obviously, if you like what we do here, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll have more of this stuff coming up for you in the future throughout 2018. We'll get some more movie stuff on here for you guys. Obviously, we'll still primarily dabble in video games, but we'll throw some of this stuff in where appropriate. So enjoyed it, Brent.
Yep.
Where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at thedude1979.
Of course, I'm at Piccolo930, so check us out there. Follow us on Twitter at The Short Pause. www.shortpause.com is the website. Like I said, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, do all that stuff. Check out all of our other content. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will see you guys next time.
May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.